goes off the roadway onto the shoulder or crosses the center line. That can be a distracted driver who's looking at a phone, or could be a tired driver.
Hi everybody, I'm Leslie Rohde. Welcome to another episode of Ask the Lawyers. Today we're talking about how to drive safely on our nation's roadways with truck drivers. It can be scary to drive around those big rigs sometimes. And what happens if we're involved in an accident with a truck? We have attorney Ray Hatcher with us today to answer our questions about this topic. He's with the Sloan Firm in Longview, Texas. Hi Ray, thanks for being with us.
I'm happy to be here.
We all get distracted sometimes when we're driving, but what are some of the common distractions for truckers?
Well, as is the case with our personal vehicles, the truck cabs have gotten way more complex, and there are more devices in there to cause distractions. Some of the devices the companies themselves put in the vehicles, for example, terminals for the drivers to keep in touch. They get emails from their dispatchers. They have to check in. And we've had multiple cases where the drivers rear end a line of stopped traffic on the interstate and never even hit their brakes because they're looking at their computer terminal. So that's one thing that can distract them. Of course, hands-free devices, cell phones, things like that. Even though the federal motor carrier safety regulations prohibit truck drivers from using handheld devices, you can drive down the interstate and see them do it all the time. And their study after study shows that drivers using a handheld device are more dangerous than even drinking drivers.
You mentioned drinking. What about drinking, drug use? Is that common among truckers at all?
Well, you do see it. Not so much with drivers that are driving for big companies, but more with independent drivers. There are stimulants that drivers use to stay awake and drive in excess of the hours that are allowed by the federal motor carrier safety regulations. Of course, those hours of service, the hours of driving limits that are put in place by the federal motor carrier safety regulations are there to prevent drivers who are fatigued from driving and causing a collision. If you're tired, your reaction rate decreases exponentially the tireder you are. So a driver that's sleep deprived because they've been taking stimulants and driving over their hours, that's a very dangerous driver.
Yeah, I would really imagine that type of behavior is extremely dangerous for other drivers out there on the roadways.
Absolutely. You see that a lot with drivers that are driving in the oil field industry. Interestingly, truck drivers in the oil field industry are exempted from the hours of service regulations in the federal motor carrier safety regulations. And the reason is because many times they're on a location, a drilling location or otherwise, and they wait for hours and hours to get whatever their truck is going to be hauling loaded and get on the road. There's quite a bit of economic pressure on companies and drivers in the oil field business to get goods, drill pipe, whatever they're hauling, to where it needs to be in a hurry. So many times you see drivers in the oil field industry that are fatigued and cause collisions.
The behaviors that we've been talking about, from fatigue, some of the stimulant use, etc. Is there anything I can do as a driver when I'm on the highway with some of these truck drivers? Is there anything we can see, notice, look at that possibly the truck is doing that would alert me that something may be going on with that truck driver that I could avoid?
Well, absolutely. First of all, anytime you're driving on the roadway, especially on an interstate where you're driving 75 miles an hour, or even in West Texas, there are speed limits that are 85 miles an hour. When you're driving around big tractor trailers, you need to be very aware of what's going on with them. Probably most of the people that are watching this have been behind a tractor trailer and it goes off the roadway onto the shoulder or crosses the center line. That can be a distracted driver who's looking at a phone, or could be a tired driver, or could be any number of things, but you see it quite often.
Good to look for some of those things, just like you would in any car, but even more so with a truck driver, I would think. I get very nervous when I'm driving right next to a truck driver sometimes. I want to get on by those rigs for sure. So you yourself, as an attorney, I know you have a lot of experience with dealing with truck drivers, especially in Texas where you are. And how do you prove as an attorney that one of these truck drivers could have been maybe using some chemical or drug, or was distracted by something, either a device in their cab or whatever? How do you prove that as an attorney?
Well, you've asked multiple things there. For example, with regard to whether they're been taking any type of stimulant or they're under the influence of anything. After a collision, a truck driver is supposed to be tested for illicit substances within a certain period of time. If there's a fatality or something like that, the state trooper or the investigating police officers may arrange to have that testing done. If it's a collision that is not a fatality, typically that's the trucking company's responsibility to have that testing done within a day or so after the collision. Now, with regard to whether the driver was distracted and caused a collision, that is a matter of, after the lawsuit is filed, obtaining discovery of documents and information from the company or the driver himself with regard to his driving log, with regard to any emails or texts that are sent via the terminal in the truck, text messages on his phone. It's a vast amount of data that you have to get as a lawyer to ferret out what was going on in that cab. Now, the good news is more and more trucking companies are putting dash cams in their trucks, and some of them even have filming inside the cab in addition to filming in front of the truck. So more and more you're getting video that actually shows the collision and what occurred, but you even have a video of what the driver was doing at the time. That actually happened to me myself. I was T-boned by a garbage truck, and luckily it had a video camera out the front and of the driver, and the driver was using a cell phone, which is prohibited both by law, but was also prohibited by his employer.
Well, thankfully, you yourself have the expertise in that area, and so would be able to help someone like me who was involved in an accident with a truck driver. So if I was involved in an accident, how quickly should I call an attorney? Should I do that immediately, or should I wait to see what happens?
Well, the first thing, obviously, is you need to be stabilized medically. But as soon as you can, and that's even if you're still in the hospital, you need to hire an attorney, because that trucking company has had its own accident investigators and its own lawyers out on the location, and many times downloaded the data from the electronic control modules inside the truck. And they have a huge jump on you if you don't have a lawyer that's looking out for your well-being. So the short answer is do it as quickly as you can.
And anything else you want to leave our viewers with today? Any piece of advice?
Well, I'll just say one more time. The typical tractor trailer that's driving on the interstate at 75 miles an hour weighs about 80,000 pounds. You need to be very, very aware of it when you're driving around it. Those trucks have large blind spots behind the truck and on the sides. Don't allow yourself to get trapped beside a truck like that, because if the truck inadvertently changes lanes and you're in their blind spot, you're going to get crushed. So be aware. That
number alone, 80,000 pounds, is pretty scary. Thank you very much, Ray, for answering our questions today.
It's been my pleasure.
And we thank all of you for watching. We would love for you to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you will not miss another episode just like this one of Ask the Lawyers. And if you're ready to choose a lawyer that lawyers choose, check out AskTheLawyers.com. Thanks again for watching. I'm Leslie Rohde.